Hi again guys, and welcome to the 109th installment of B-Road Ballers on GT6, and a lot of the vehicles that we feature in multiple series, but this is one of the series where you can notice it the most, aren't necessarily cars that most people would find an exciting prospect, or go into a new racing game thinking, oh, I really hope the 1978 Mitsubishi Mirage is featured. That of course is this car. It's not a vehicle which most people will be looking for in the dealership, that most people will care is on the game or not. It's one of those cars that if it was discontinued from Gran Turismo, people probably wouldn't be uttering an outcry over its loss. However, a lot of cars like that can actually turn out to be a lot better than people initially think. And that is kind of the definition, really, of a sleeper car. However, there are some that go beyond that, and they're not just better than people assume, because more often than not, that's not really that big a deal. A lot of cars are better than people think they are, but there are some that go to the next level. And the next level after that is to be a true sleeper. A car which isn't just better than you think, but a car which is better than vehicles which you think are good, are in comparison to them. Now, is this that good, or is it just better than people think? Well, that's what we're here to find out, as with a lot of the cars in this series. So consider what you get. First of all, the price. This car is dirt cheap. It costs a fraction over 9,000 credits, so it is one of the cheapest cars in the game. It's both a classic and a hot hatch, or let's say just a hatch, so it does fall pretty well in both series, B-Road Ballers and Days Gone By, but it's first and foremost a hatchback rather than a classic, at least in my book, so we're featuring it here. Now, as far as what you get for that 9 grand, it's a 1.4 litre, it's front engine, front wheel drive, and you can turbocharge that engine up to 270 horsepower. That's pretty good. That's probably better than you might expect it to be, in fact, and that's a lot higher than it easily could have been, given that it's only 1.4 litres and it's from 1978. And to be fair, a lot of people would probably forgive the car if it didn't have that much power. They'd be happy with maybe 220, 230. So it really does go above and beyond in that regard. Because, to put that into perspective, that's roughly the same kind of power as a Golf R in something from 1978. Something more specifically from 1978 that weighs 708 kilos with the Stage 3 weight loss package. That's not very heavy at all, and the horsepower per tonne mirrors that. 381 can give plenty of sports cars the chills, let's just say. That's a lot better, again, than this car easily could have been. As far as peak torque, it's also pretty high, 219 pound-feet, and so far the numbers are certainly shaping up very well, especially again for the price. It's such a dirt cheap vehicle. The only potential downside is the PP level. It's not ridiculously high, it doesn't suffer from Red Bull Junior syndrome, as I've often said, but I would say it's perhaps a little bit too high, although in the case of this car, understandably, to some degree. It sits at 514, which, as I said, that's not unusable, it's not stupidly high, but for what it is, and for what it can do, it would probably be better off if it were a little bit lower. Not, say, 450, of course not, but maybe something more in the region of 505, 503 maybe, that kind of level, because although it has good acceleration for what it is, the handling is, as you'd assume, very good, the turn-in is fantastic. As with a lot of front-wheel drive cars, it can save you a lot when you throw it into corner with maybe a bit too much gusto, or maybe overcooked a corner a little bit. That's where the front-wheel drive can really come in handy, especially in a car with a low curb weight as well. But at the same time, the mid-range and especially top-end performance, as you'd assume, isn't that strong. Not for a hatchback, it's actually pretty good for a hatchback, especially an older one. It's one of the quickest classic hatches in the game, but I'm thinking more so against vehicles which aren't just hatchbacks, because at the 500 plus PP level, you're really starting to get into some serious performance territory. You can get big, pretty powerful muscle cars at that level, you can get some sports coupes, modern ones, you can even get some lower level cup cars or touring cars. So for this car to take on those machines, it's got to be good. And it's got to be good, at least to some degree, at pretty much everything. Unless it's going to be, of course, a speciality car, which this isn't really. However, I will say that this vehicle, as understated as it is, and I would call this a true sleeper, definitely, it's very good, is a car which, as I've said with a number of others, is not an essential purchase. Certainly not. Most people won't even give it a second thought, and I think for most people I can honestly say you're not really missing out on anything that you would want to experience. Because to appreciate a car like this, you have to be a certain kind of Gran Turismo player and a certain kind of driver. If this car appeals to you, if sleeper cars appeal to you, then even without driving it I can say you will enjoy it. That's if you haven't driven it. Once you drive it, you will, because it's just got that kind of appeal. If you're not particularly into classics or hatchbacks or sleepers, well, chances are you're probably not watching this video, because this is all three of those things. But if you're not, it's a car which you might still enjoy, but won't necessarily need, especially with such a high PP level. It is, however, a vehicle which I would say, if you fancy a challenge, for instance, in online lobbies, you want to use something which can definitely win, but doesn't win as easily. Maybe you won't win by much, or maybe it will act as a little bit of a ballast to you based on how good your skill is. Say, for instance, you think that you're probably the best player in the lobby, but you want to give yourself a bit more of a challenge. Maybe use something like this. It's good enough to win, but at the same time you'll have to work the car harder than, say, somebody who's got a muscle car at that same PP level. So overall, that's the kind of vehicle that you're talking about, and if that appeals to you, then certainly check it out. It's a tiny amount of money to pay out, without tuning of course, and so that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.